trust me, it will all make sense very shortly. Over the millennia, our world has become obsessed with appearance. As we all know, traditionally how we present ourselves determines how our personality and lifestyle is perceived by the world around us, regardless of how superficial it is or unreflective of the people we truly are. But it's not always out of a desire to impress others. We do it for comfort, for practicality, to feel good about ourselves, to mask our insecurities, or simply to feel visible, to show the world that we are still here and not to be forgotten about. This is the feeling that has plagued the life of Jean-Baptiste, a protege perfumer in 18th century France who was left orphaned as an infant after his mother was executed for attempting to murder him. Gwenouille, French for frog, finds himself to be uniquely different from others, as he's gifted with a remarkable sense of smell that the world has never seen before, allowing him to make out the most subtle and intricate smells that even a dog could not decipher. However, it isn't long until he discovers a divine scent lingering from a young woman, who he murders just so that he can have the smell all to himself. But soon the smell fades, and after being left in despair and unending desire, Jean-Baptiste discovers his purpose in life and sets off on a journey to recreate this otherworldly mysterious odour by murdering various women and preserving their scent to produce an all-powerful perfume. This is the story of a murderer. Just before we begin, to make such a bizarre niche topic about a murderous psychopath stealing the scent of his victims to concoct a magical perfume possible, I had to infiltrate the beauty community and steal one of their sponsors. So I want to thank Scentbird for sponsoring and supporting this unusual subject matter. Now hold up, I know what you're thinking, why is a horror channel promoting perfume? Well, don't discriminate, it's a common misconception that monsters, ghosts, and your favourite serial killers don't like to smell good. Look, if Eight-Legged Freaks has taught me anything, it's that not only do perfumes help make us feel good and confident and give a distinct first impression, it also helps ward off spiders. Apparently they don't like mint, lemon, cedar, and lavender, so I guess Versace's a good choice because it has mint and lemon in it. Anyway, as someone who does actually use perfume on a regular basis because I'm a sellout who likes a good smell and lives with 3 other men with a single shared bathroom, Scentbird is a fragrance subscription service that allows you to sample and experiment with over 600 brands like Calvin Klein, Versace, and Issey Miyake. You can tell I clearly picked the ones with the sexiest names, but there's also Prada and Gucci and Mercedes because apparently some people like new car smell, I guess. All you do is select the fragrances you want to try out for the month, and these cute little pretty generously sized 8ml bottles get shipped right to your door absolutely free. If you want, you can even take a short quiz to help pick fragrances that fit your mood, personality, and general aesthetic. So if you're like me, you might get Issey Miyake because you want that cinnamon winter aesthetic, or Versace because you want to smell fresh, or Burberry because you want a less potent fruity flavour. Hell, if it's not for you, why not get a few scents for your friends, a significant other, or your parents? I got my mom DKNY because that's her favourite apparently. Scentbird even sent me one of their new scents, Amber Leopard by Sanctuary, and with every order off this scent, Scentbird will be donating $1 to the Wildlife Conservation Society, an organisation whose mission is to conserve wildlife and ecosystems by generating and applying innovative scientific and field-based solutions to critical problems. Yeah, that sounds good to me. So if you want to try something different and help out the channel, make sure to use my link below and coupon code for 30% off. That's just $10 for your first month. Hey, and why not also download the iOS Android app to make things more convenient? Anyway, on to the video. Released in 1985 by German writer Patrick Suskind, Perfume, the Story of a Murderer takes an alternative look at the notion that we should never judge a book by its cover, by focusing on how much of that judgment is actually influenced by something more potent. our sense of smell. Smell has a profoundly powerful effect on our emotions, even to the point of having a somewhat physical control over us. We gravitate towards the things that smell nice because they make us feel better, safe, and comfortable, while we shrivel in disgust and avoid things that we've ambiguously deemed smelly. Superficiality and appearance has always been a long-examined concept in culture, but we tend to underestimate the importance that smell has on our understanding of the world, as it affects everyone in both positive and negative ways. For example, I've always been paranoid about my body odor because I was bullied as a child for sweating very easily, even though it's a completely normal thing, and I find myself finding comfort in incense and scented candles because the smells help calm my anxiety. There's something oddly mystical about it that's very difficult to explain, but what perfume does is takes all the personal affliction and ecstasy associated with smells and transforms it into a deeper allegory about identity and finding life's purpose. In Jean-Baptiste's world, scent is a representation of the soul. It's the only thing that matters, and when you die, it dies with you. And ultimately, that's what makes Jean-Baptiste different from others, because soon he learns that he himself doesn't have one. While on his way to Grasse to learn enfleurage, which is basically a technique to preserve the fragrance within plants, he finds himself becoming repulsed by humanity's own scent and goes into existential self-isolation in a cave, where he discovers that he has no scent of his own, and thus uses it as the rationale to explain why he's seemingly invisible to the world. Jean-Baptiste is nothing but cold and apathetic towards humanity. He sees no meaning in it, hence he's quick to turn to a life of murder because he doesn't believe humanity has anything to value other than the divine scent he's so driven to preserve. Since he was alone from birth, he never developed a personality or was ever educated to feel much of anything. Up to the point of discovering the divine smell that instigates his journey, his purpose in life was merely to be used as a tool for labour after being sold by the orphanage. He's never truly had a chance to live a life that he is in control of, and so what we see is him breaking away from the shackles of a pointless, non-existent life in search of purpose. In a paradoxical way, the hollow shell of a character he's presented with makes him more human, despite the narrative's best efforts to paint him as nothing more than one of society's decrepit monsters, which, don't get me wrong, he totally is, but we'll get to that later. The major turning point in Jean-Baptiste's motive comes relatively early on, when he goes from simply wanting to preserve the divine smell to wanting to create a perfume that will give him influence over society. But there is an underlying hypocrisy to Jean-Baptiste's own greed, as it kinda mirrors that of the people he despises. This is a world plagued by possession and materialism. It's all about what you own. In fact, Jean-Baptiste is a product of possession himself, as he's sold by his orphanage and then by his labourer, before finally being set free by his mentor and ends up back in the hands of another labourer. At the time, the product of perfume was exclusively for the rich, and kinda still is today to some degree, as it served as another symbol of their status, and Jean-Baptiste quickly finds himself as an intruder within this elitist culture, but ironically understands it better than those who can afford it. 18th century Europe saw a monumental rise in capitalist ideology, with the likes of the Industrial Revolution and mercantilism introducing a more drastic need for economic monopolies. As such, it led to an even greater discrepancy between the rich and poor, with the former arrogantly flaunting their affluency as if it was an example of civility. The poor were then seen as venomous to society, a social plague that was kept at bay as the rich continued to dominate and rule over the rest of the world. I've explored this before in my Sweeney Todd video, which touched on the perception the rich had that the poor were uncivilized and barbaric, even to the point they would be rumoured to eat their own to survive, which becomes the twisted irony of Sweeney Todd's story, and as we'll see, even Jean-Baptiste's own tale. Because as his murders escalate, so does the public hysteria, who begin seeing him as a demon sent from hell. Since Patrick Süskind was incredibly private, there is no way of knowing the true inspiration behind the story, yet some reaching theories suggest that the character of Jean-Baptiste was influenced by Spain's first recorded serial killer, Manuel Blanco Romasanta, who during the mid-1800s strangled multiple women and children, sold their clothes, and used their fat to make fine quality soap. I say reaching because Romasanta's defense was that he believed he was controlled by a curse that turned him into a werewolf, so the theory kinda wears thin in that department. So as far as I'm concerned, Jean-Baptiste was less so directly inspired by a real killer, and was more of an amalgamation of various criminals and myths that not only caused great public paranoia, but intensified the divide between the rich and poor, such as the case of Jack the Ripper, a man also viewed as a demon from hell who murdered prostitutes in the impoverished part of Whitechapel district in London, causing all the rich people to either shit themselves or give a middle finger to the poor, thinking it was a punishment from God or whatever. In the case of Perfume, it's more of a symbolic gesture of societal fears at the time. I mean, it's very much possible to view Jean-Baptiste as a representation of death, especially seeing as all his previous owners die in sudden freak accidents shortly after he leaves their ownership. In fact, since we literally compared Scent to the soul, he's practically a Grim Reaper when you think about it, collecting the souls of various innocent women to ultimately make himself more powerful. However, eventually he gets caught after killing his final victim, but not before completing his divine perfume, which he uses to influence the guards to set him free prior to his execution, eventually causing the public spectators to praise him as a seemingly godlike presence, forgiving and forgetting his crimes, and an orgy commences. It all sounds ridiculous because it is, yet it's maturely handled to show the power that Scent has over people's emotions and control, but even more so, it simply confirms to Jean-Baptiste just how shallow the world really is. Before his final act of self-exile, the story accentuates the hunger the public crave for justice. Since Jean-Baptiste is set free, blame is soon placed on his enfleurage owner after the possessions of the victims are found on his property, and after being tortured into confessing, he's hanged so that the public's lust for blood is quenched. It plays right into people's morbid indulgence in public executions, where it felt like people could channel their hatred and frustration into a monster as if this was ritual-esque. In fact, just for context, public executions weren't banned in France until 1939 when, as pointed out in Comparative Capital Punishment, French President Albert Albrun was appalled at the public's immoral hysteria and lust towards the guillotine execution of serial killer Eugene Wedman, with some claiming the audience tried to soak up Wedman's blood as a souvenir. As you could probably tell by now, the story is embedded with dark sexual undertones starting from Jean-Baptiste's lust for smells to the crescendo orgy that, for lack of a better word, climaxes as Jean-Baptiste's ultimate goal. The reason for this is that I feel the story is designed to dismantle the illusion or subvert the premise of Romanticism that dominated 18th century European culture. Romanticism was a response to the Industrial Revolution I mentioned earlier, along with the Age of Enlightenment that saw intellectualism and modernity dominate contemporary thinking. Romanticism was more or less a rejection of classical realism, favouring emotion and feeling as the one and only true means in which to experience the world around you. It encouraged deep indulgence in subjectivity to the point of borderline fantasy, and in the case of Perfume, it bridged a gap between romanticism and realism to explore a character who might live in the realm of romanticism, but doesn't feel any emotion in which to truly experience it. By the end of the story, it's about Jean-Baptiste finding his emotions, but the only one he discovers is disgust. There is nothing romantic about a world where love is based on possession and superficiality rather than the person. So, in a final act of self-exile and to essentially prove his point, Jean-Baptiste goes back to the fish market where he was born and douses himself in his perfume, leading to the people around him tearing him apart and consuming him, leaving nothing behind. As if Jean-Baptiste never existed. And if he did so, it was only for a moment, thanks to the power given to him by his beloved perfume. While Jean-Baptiste realizes he could never love or be loved, as the crowd disperses from his remains, they themselves claim that they consumed him purely out of love.